Warning, this story contains disturbing content about violence and death, asterisk. During the 1950s and 1960s, people were scared of nuclear war. Children practiced hiding under desks at school. Around this same time, more people started seeing UFOs, especially near places that dealt with nuclear weapons. New Mexico was where America made its first atomic bombs. This desert area has had many strange UFO sightings over the years. Most of these were just weird lights in the sky. But some stories tell of something much worse, including one of the most frightening UFO encounters ever reported. This is the story of what happened to Sergeant Lovett. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. America entered World War II. The country's best scientists were sent to a secret place in the New Mexico desert. Their job was to build a new kind of weapon, one that could kill like nothing before. On July 16, 1945, the world's first atomic bomb exploded in the White Sands Desert. In a bright flash, the world entered a new age of fear. Now weapons could destroy entire cities. After the war, America and Russia competed to build better nuclear weapons. The White Sands area, along with nearby Holloman Air Force Base, became the center of this arms race. As nuclear weapons got better, so did the rockets that carried them. Using ideas from Nazi rocket scientists, America created ballistic missiles. These could carry nuclear bombs hundreds of miles away. The White Sands Desert was perfect for testing these dangerous weapons. During the early 1950s, dozens of missiles were shot into the sky above the town of Alamogordo. On a quiet night in March 1956, another test was planned. But this test would be different. As the missile disappeared into the starry sky, no one could have guessed that this test would lead to a truly strange and scary encounter. Looks like we're on the right track, Sergeant. The missile broke apart in midair. We should find the pieces soon. Keep watching for them. Yes, sir. Sorry to say this, Major, but this is usually a job for pilots. Pilots only fly during the day, son. These orders come from the top. Between you and me, I think something's happening with Russia. President Eisenhower wants to stay ahead, so these missile tests are being rushed. What's wrong, Sergeant? Not a morning person. Honestly, I just love the smell of desert air at night. Yes, sir. When ballistic missiles were new, they often broke down. Some exploded on the launch pad. Others fell apart while flying. This night's test was no different. The test missile broke into pieces in midair before crashing into the desert. The military always studied crash sites carefully. Even broken pieces could teach them how to make better rockets in the future. Even though it was very early in the morning, around 3 a.m., Air Force Major William Cunningham couldn't sleep. Maybe it was coffee, or maybe he just wanted to do his job well. Either way, he was eager to look at the crash site. Sergeant Jonathan Lovett drove the Jeep. He took Major Cunningham out into the empty desert to find the wreckage. This tired sergeant didn't share the Major's enthusiasm. With only a rough idea of where the missile had crashed, it seemed like it would be a very long and boring night. Neither of them knew how strange that night was about to become. Yeah, this looks like it, Sergeant. At least most of it. No doubt pieces are spread around the area. I'll start checking these parts to see how much recording equipment survived. Should we have asked for more people to help with this, Major? We could cover more ground. No, not needed. We're just here to find the parts and do basic checks. I'll send the location back to command, and the recovery team will come out after sunrise with a crane. Right. At least somebody's getting a good night's sleep. What's that, Sergeant? Nothing, sir. I'm going to check the other side of that hill to see if the rest of the rocket landed over there. All right, go ahead. Just don't go too far and stay away from any bushes. Why is that? Haven't been in the desert long, have you, Sergeant? Rattlesnakes like to curl up around the bottom of shrubs. Oh, wonderful. I'll be sure to stay away. According to Major Cunningham's story, he and Sergeant Lovett went out into the bombing range around 3 a.m. After searching for a long time, they finally found a small area with scattered pieces of the missile. While Cunningham looked through the wreckage, Sergeant Lovett wanted to get a better view of the area. He walked toward a sand hill a short distance away. Focused on his work, Cunningham didn't pay much attention as the sergeant walked off into the desert and disappeared behind the hill. Then Lovett screamed. It was a horrible mix of terror and pain that cut through the quiet night. Major Cunningham's first thought was that Lovett had simply run into a rattlesnake. He was not prepared for what he was about to see. As he climbed over the sand dunes, following the frantic, pained cries of his sergeant, Cunningham saw a nightmare scene. A large flying disc hung 15 to 20 feet above the ground. From the bottom of this strange craft, a long snake-like object reached all the way down to the ground. It seemed to have grabbed the legs of Sergeant Lovett, who was violently fighting and being dragged along, trying to break free. The major, shocked and frozen by fear, could only watch as the helpless Lovett, screaming for his life, was then dragged upward into the unknown craft. Once he had disappeared up into the bottom of the disc, it quickly rose high into the night, shooting off into the stars. This left Major Cunningham alone in the desert. "All right, Major, we're going to go through this one more time. You were the last one to see him. We just need to know roughly where you last saw him because it's going to be a hot day and he doesn't have any water. Whatever you can tell us now is your chance. Look, I've told you everything I know. It sounds crazy, you have to believe me. I don't know where he is. He could be off in space for all I know. If I could make up a better story, I would. I don't even believe it myself. It's like I told you." After the craft left, Major Cunningham ran to the jeep's radio and reported what happened to Missile Control. Missile Control said they did see an unknown object on radar moving through the area just before this happened. When Cunningham's bosses at Holloman Air Force Base heard the Major's frantic, bizarre story, they were more than a little doubtful. What was certain, however, was that one of their own was missing and possibly in great danger, lost somewhere in the huge White Sands Desert. With the Major kept at the White Sands Base Medical Center for observation, every available man and resource was used to search all 3,200 square miles of the bombing range. This was a huge task, even with an entire base full of airmen helping to look for him. For 2 days, despite looking everywhere, no trace of the missing sergeant could be found. As the search went beyond 72 hours, the command feared that their chances of finding Lovett alive were getting very slim. But later on that third day, they finally found him. Did I ever tell you how much I hate sand? Coarse, rough, irritating, gets everywhere. Yeah, Andy, you've told me plenty of times. Aren't you from California? They have sand there. Yeah, but I'm not from that part of California. I grew up in the city. Less sand and cactus, more sidewalks and beatniks playing bongos. Not sure which is worse though. Man, my feet are killing me. How long are they going to keep us out here anyway? What kind of idiot wanders off into the desert? Did anybody bother checking his bed? No idea, but I'm with you. Maybe he got homesick and just went AWOL. I'm giving it 10 more minutes, then we blow this popsicle stand. Oh please, don't even mention popsicles right now. What I wouldn't give for, stupid vultures. Ah, that scared me. Wait a minute, oh God, wait. Is that, get the lieutenant. Get the lieutenant. About 10 miles further down range from where he was last seen, 2 airmen finally found the body of Sergeant Jonathan Lovett. His corpse had been left in the harsh desert for quite some time. The area's wild animals and scavengers had been eating the poor sergeant's remains. It was clear to the men who later studied the horrible scene that Lovett's death was far from natural. The sergeant's body had been expertly cut up. Lovett's tongue had been removed from the lower part of his jaw. A cut had been made just under the tip of his chin and went all the way back to his throat and voice box. His eyes had also been removed, along with his reproductive organs and rectum. There were comments in the autopsy report about the clear surgical skill used to remove these parts, including the genitals, which had been neatly taken out like a plug. Despite the serious wounds to the airman's body, not a single drop of blood had stained the desert sand around him. This was because, even more strangely, Lovett's entire body had no blood in it. He had been completely drained of it. Despite this chilling fact, his autopsy concluded that the sergeant didn't die from losing too much blood. There was no evidence of the kind of collapse that happens when someone loses all their blood. A note in the autopsy report added that this was unusual because anybody who dies from complete blood loss always shows signs of this collapse. Adding to the odd, Disturbing scene: several meat-eating birds that had eaten the sergeant's remains were found nearby, now dead from apparent poisoning. Whoever or whatever had done this to Sergeant Lovett clearly knew human anatomy well and was skilled with surgical tools. The facts surrounding what had obviously happened were simply baffling. How could Major Cunningham or anyone else pull off such a complex kidnapping, killing, surgical cutting, and body disposal right under the nose of the U.S. Air Force? As one could imagine, in the days that followed, military investigators endlessly questioned Major Cunningham about when, why, and how this happened. Regardless of whether they believed the bizarre sequence of events that Cunningham stuck to in his story, the fact remained that he was the last known person to see Jonathan Lovett alive. It certainly didn't help that the events leading up to Lovett's supposed kidnapping were clearly suspicious. Two men alone in the desert during the early morning hours, not a single soul for miles around, certainly the perfect setup for anyone looking to get away with such a horrible crime. But the circumstances alone weren't enough to charge Cunningham with the killing. The complete lack of physical evidence left investigators totally stumped. As quickly as he was said to have been taken by an unidentified flying saucer, the case of Sergeant Lovett quickly went cold. Investigators were left with a baffling array of dead ends and unanswered questions. Who or what had visited the White Sands Desert that fateful night? Perhaps more chillingly, was it still out there? If someone wanted to research the mystery of Sergeant Lovett's strange kidnapping and murder, they would almost certainly learn about a series of Air Force reports known as Project Grudge. Beginning in February 1949, Grudge was one of the first real attempts by the United States Air Force to formally study the wave of UFO sightings that had gripped the nation ever since the 1947 Roswell incident. Over the following year, Air Force investigators compiled 12 monthly reports and 2 special reports. They broke down and explained away many well-reported UFO sightings. Ultimately, the study concluded that most supposed UFO sightings could be explained by the public's unfamiliarity with aircraft or weather phenomena. Regardless of its many down-to-earth findings, Project Grudge paved the way for further UFO studies under the famous Project Blue Book. The Grudge reports are officially declassified and available for anyone to read. However, there is something odd worth noting. While reports 1 to 12 were released, as well as the final 14th special report, a mysterious 13th report appears to be missing from the files. Enter William English, a former Green Beret serving in the U.S. Army as a captain before his assignment to a former Royal Air Force base in England as an analyst. According to him, Report 13 supposedly details the darker, unexplained side of encounters with extraterrestrials. English stated that this now missing Grudge report was given to him in 1977 for analysis. He recorded his memories of the report onto 2 cassette tapes. These were later written down into letters which were passed around among UFO believers in the 1980s. His story about the report indicates that unlike the other 13 much shorter reports, containing about 20 pages each, this 13th report contains 624 pages broken up into chapters. These pages are supposedly full of information about close encounters, captured alien craft, and live specimens housed at various Air Force facilities. Most chillingly, they contain evidence of animal and human cutting up and killing. Jonathan Lovett's kidnapping and murder, alongside horrible photos of his cut-up remains, are supposedly contained within this missing report. It is certainly true that the American government, foreign governments, and many people around the world have long considered the existence of UFOs credible, if not worrying. The mysterious crafts are seen as a potential enemy threat, whether from space or not. Beginning with the Air Force's Project Sign in 1949, succeeded by Projects Grudge and then Blue Book, and now the ongoing present-day investigations, the subject of UFOs has for decades remained a topic of discussion and thorough investigation within the United States. Their repeated sightings near sensitive defense sites connected to the nation's most powerful weapons has heightened the question of whether they might come from enemies known or unknown. These crafts and other things are now widely called UAPs in official documents, unidentified anomalous phenomena. This is a catch-all term to describe objects detected not only in the air but also in sea and space, objects that can't be easily explained. But unidentified objects and orbs of light zipping through the sky or under the ocean surface are one thing. The kind of disturbing close encounter described here is something else entirely. To be fair, startling stories are still being offered even today by current military officials about their knowledge of both UAPs and even alien creatures that supposedly pilot these ships. But nonetheless, Sergeant Lovett's gruesome tale certainly requires some doubt about believing it's real. Once again, this particular story appears to center on the single testimony of one man, William English. Project Grudge's report number 13 is cited by him as the key source material, which is now mysteriously unavailable for reading despite public access to the other declassified reports. English's own written testimony about Report 13 is available online. In 2014, a researcher had the opportunity to speak with Bill English over the phone about his involvement with the report. Following this conversation, the researcher stated, "Bill is aware of his controversial reputation and feels that he's been misrepresented. He said to me, 'I'm on the web, there's all kinds of stuff written about me and 90% of it is lies.' For example, he said I was a captain in the Army, not the Air Force, and there was a B-52 that went down. Most importantly, he stands by his claims of having seen the Project Grudge Blue Book number 13 report, but he did not discuss any details of it with me. So much of what is said is like the game of telephone, and clearly things get distorted while being repeated again and again as gossip and rumors. While the documented evidence of Lovette's death remains a mystery, if it exists at all, the case offers interesting parallels to other reported cuttings, both past and present. In 1988, a man's body was supposedly found at a reservoir in Brazil. According to reports, the victim had been dead for 48 to 72 hours, but there was no sign of decay. The eyes, ears, tongue, and genitals had been removed, as had the digestive organs. Officials were never able to identify the victim. Photos of this man's cut-up remains can be found online if you can stomach that sort of thing. Other than humans, widespread reports of livestock cutting also contain similar details. Since the early 1970s, incidents of cut-up cattle, sheep, horses, rabbits, deer, bison, and elk have been recorded. The bloodless corpses often lack jaw flesh, their ears, eyes, tongue, lymph nodes, and genitals. In 2009, the Denver Post reported 4 calves were found cut up in similar ways. NPR reported a 2019 incident in Colorado in which 5 young purebred bulls mysteriously showed up dead, drained of blood and with body parts cleanly cut out. Among the baffling circumstances, one primary unanswered question is how the 2,000-pound animals were able to be subdued and moved without leaving a trace. No tracks were found anywhere around where the animals had been dropped. The animals themselves hadn't been shot. Because of the high value of the animals, especially considering they were breeding bulls, their loss was devastating to the ranch that owned them, with the subsequent loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of future calves. At the time the NPR article was published, it stated that the sheriff's office was continuing to receive calls about the killings, and the ranch had put up a $25,000 reward for information that could solve the case. Taking all this into consideration with respect to Sergeant Lovette's case, we are left with just as many new questions as we are provided anything close to sensible answers. While the whereabouts of Report number 13 or any other significant evidence of his kidnapping and subsequent death remain a mystery, it is noteworthy that the horrible tale of Sergeant Lovette is just one of many odd, unexplained accounts that have come out of the nuclear testing range that is the White Sands region of New Mexico. Note, this story, while dramatically told, is considered by most serious UFO researchers to be either a hoax or an urban legend. There is no verified official documentation supporting the claims, and the primary sources have credibility issues. The story should be viewed as entertainment rather than factual reporting.